All
You
right,
guys
guys.
always give us something to use.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, it's 12:30, so we'll go ahead and get started and honor everybody's time. I'm pretty excited to be here today. A lot of people coming on, so great to see everybody from the Central region and a bunch of other different regions too. I think we've got some people from the Southeast, people from the West, people from the East, and even from the Southwest. So it's good to see a lot of folks here tuning in. Today's purpose is to follow up with our conversation from Tuesday night. Tuesday night, I was on with the Little League virtual umpire clinics, and we talked about the wedge and introduce the wedge at home plate. So today we want to follow up with that. And to do that today, what we've got is I've got a guest speaker and his name's Brian deBrauwere. Brian comes to us out of Pennsylvania. Brian's a former professional umpire. Brian, you made it all the way up to AAA, is that right? Yep, AAA and then in the International League, and then he's currently working Division I baseball and then serves with United Collegiate Umpires Group. I believe he's been the rules interpreter for the last year or so, but does a bunch of different instruction there too. And if many of you guys in the Central have taken a look at our trainings over the wedge in the past, Brian's been kind of the guy that we've stolen videos from YouTube and used. So he and I have been fortunate to develop a relationship over the last month or so as I was trying to get ready for the wedge talks. And just asked him if he'd show up and talk us through the wedge here today and some of those questions as well. So I'm excited to have him on and get ready to turn things over to him here in just a second. I do just want to go over an overview of what exactly we've got here rules-wise and ground rules and things like that. As normal here, and we're all kind of getting used to this in the virtual world, if you've got questions, go ahead and send them into the chat. We'll go ahead and filter through those and make sure that we get those forwarded on to Brian and myself as we go on. But Brian, what I've asked him to do is very similar to what we did with Mark last week, and that is to kind of identify three major things that he thinks are most important in executing the wedge. So I'll have him share his three big takeaways or the thing that he has done through his instructional process and through his learning process that he thinks have been most beneficial to him in executing the wedge. And then I'll turn it over to him. I think he may have some video clips to share with us. And he also will take some question and answers. So I appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate Brian for being here. And without further ado, I got my notebook ready. I'm going to take a bunch of notes here too. But nonetheless here, let's go ahead and turn it over to Brian. And Brian, the floor is all yours here to talk us through some wedge stuff.
Man, you are professional, buddy. That was a heck of an introduction. And I will say, you guys are incredibly lucky to have Stu. I've really enjoyed a couple conversations with him. He's a very forward thinker. I know that in the umpiring world, sometimes it's easy to fall back on the old way, but when we can break things down and see the reasons to do things a different way, that's the path we need to follow. And Stu is right on the money with a lot of the things that he's talking about. So keep working hard, Stu, and you guys, he's a good person to listen to. Having said that, let's get into talking about the wedge, and I'll share my screen here. I'm going to keep it out of slideshow mode. It's just a little easier to deal with. Please bear with me if there's any issues throughout the presentation, but we'll give it the best shot we can. So Stu said that we're going to talk about three keys to the wedge, and that really falls in line with how we've taught the wedge over the years. Those three keys, and these are going to be very similar, if not the exact same, to what you guys talked about in your call earlier this week. Those three keys are stay close, follow the fielder, and then stay in the window, right? So let's talk for just a second about the older theories in terms of taking tag plays, and especially at the plate. I think it's probably not all that shocking to say that the predominant thinking here was third baseline extended, first baseline extended, back up to the edge of the dirt circle, pick a side, and hopefully you pick right. The reason for that was there wasn't such a need to be in the perfect position every single play, right? And that's because of the development of video replay and the increase in the number of games that are covered by very clear, accurate cameras, right? And so in the past, we used to just umpire for the dugouts, basically. If you kind of stand in a general spot that's going to give you somewhat of a good look at the play, and you can kind of see it the same way the dugouts will see it, then you'll be all right, because there's nothing to prove you wrong. The other thing about the first baseline, third baseline extended thinking was, you know how sometimes, like with hitting instruction, like baseball hitters, an instructor will tell a kid to do one thing, and then that instructor goes out and does a completely different thing when he's actually hitting. So that's kind of what happens with the first baseline, third baseline extended instruction. Very good umpires would instruct junior umpires to do that, to go first baseline, third baseline extended. And then themselves, they would go out and do something different. And in their head, they might think that that's what they were doing. But the reality is, the really good instinct, high level umpires are going to do something different on the field. And so that's what we're going to try to introduce with the wedge thinking. So let's look at our first key. Our first key is stay close. And another way to say that is don't back up, right? So the old instruction was back up to the edge of the dirt circle and then pick a side, go first baseline or third baseline extended, depending on, you know, where the ball was coming from or the likelihood of a swipe tag versus a collision play. The problem with all that is that you're kind of guessing and you're predicting the outcome of the play. And that's not something that we can predict before it happens. Maybe the ball takes a funny hop and it kind of slows down and the catcher takes longer to catch it. And so rather than being a collision play, it's a swipe tag. Or maybe the runner stumbles a little bit and he's slower to get there. And so the catcher can take away the front edge of the plate, and it shifts from a swipe tag to a collision play. So the reality is we can't predict how this play is going to happen before it happens. So if we can't predict how it's going to happen before it happens, we need to be able to do what? We need to react, right? We need to be able to react to all these changing things that are in front of us as they're happening. And the only way we can react is if every step we take on the field is more meaningful, right? Every step has to be more meaningful. So this first point, this stay close, this is all about geometry. I'm sure we have some teachers. I don't know if there's a math teacher in the room that can explain circumference and radius and diameter and pi r squared and all that stuff. But in the absence of that, let's look at these two lines. We've got it here for you guys, right in blue and red. Okay, so this blue line here and this red line here are the same distance. That's the same length of a line, which represents 1 step's worth of distance, right? So you can see what 1 step from much closer to the play does in terms of changing your angle versus 1 step from further away. So that's why we need to stay close. If we're going forward with the theory of we need to react constantly as the play is unfolding, those reactions have to be very meaningful. That's why our distance is important. We've got to stay closer to plays. Should we break in between each point, Stu, or do you want to just go plow through it?
I think you can just keep going. I haven't had any questions yet. And if you guys do have any questions at any point, just type them in the chat, and then eventually I'll filter them out and feed them to you, Brian. So
yeah,
no questions just yet. So yeah, keep on going through, Brian. This is great stuff.
And please, guys, please ask questions. I know you had the presentation on Tuesday. You know, you've had some time to mull it over and think about it. If you disagree with something, if you're unsure, this is the time to do it. Because listen, I get it. It's different than what you've been taught. You know, back up and go to third baseline extended versus stay close and keep moving. It's different. And you know, we want to help people get comfortable with that, because the reality is it's gonna put you in better positions to see plays. So please ask questions, even if you think you're being controversial or whatever. All right, so that's why we want to stay closer. Okay, that's why we want to stay closer. Now, we need to stay with the fielder, right? So we've stayed close to the play. We haven't backed away. We've stayed close. We need to continue to move as this play unfolds based on where the fielder goes, okay? Based on where the fielder goes. Now, what's important is we want to react to the fielder going after the ball, right? That's the movement by the fielder that's going to drive us, not the fielder's initial movement. And when I say that, what I mean is the catcher is set up back here behind the plate, and when the ball's put in play, he goes out in front of the plate. So that's his staging area. That's where he's going to set up in anticipation of this play developing. We don't need to react to that. And it's actually very important that you don't start moving before the catcher starts moving here. We don't want movement in one direction or the other, because if you move in one direction and the play necessitates a step in the other direction, well, you've got to regain that step back in the other direction. So we want to stay still. We've got to be in that position waiting to see what happens. Now, the catcher moves to the right, okay? And the beautiful thing about these plays is, in all of these cases, we have a runner coming from third base. We know where he's coming from. So when we ask the question of how do I stay in between these two things, in between the fielder and the runner, how do we stay in between the fielder and the runner here? If we stay put in this spot, is there a chance that the runner slides between us and the fielder and we get straight lined? Yes. So what do we need to do? We need to move and keep ourselves in that window. So following the fielder is all about keeping yourself in the window between the fielder and the runner. Okay, fielder and the runner is in between the fielder and the runner is the key to this second point, by following the fielder. So if the catcher moves forward, we need to move forward with him, because we know where the runner is coming from, and we cannot let that runner slide between us and the fielder. That's how we get straight lined. That's how we miss seeing tags. Catcher goes up the third base line. We're going to go up there with them. Now, of course, this is only to a certain degree. If the catcher is all the way up here, we don't need to keep running up the third base line with him, because there's no longer going to be a play. He's just going to chase down an errant throw at that point. One of the other ways that this thinking, this tag play theory gets put is staying on track with the fielder. So if the fielder leaves the base, if he goes after the ball, leaves the base, we want to stay on track with that fielder, because the tag is always going to come off of his body, right? And if we stay attached to the fielder's back, another way to put this would be backpack the catcher. So just pretend like you're in one of those little Yoda backpacks that, you know, Luke Skywalker carries him around in. And when he goes somewhere, you go somewhere. By the way, big night last night for Star Wars fans. I don't know if anybody's excited about that news, but big night. Anyway, I digress. Now, here's why. Okay, this is the key play, because a lot of plays we end up kind of swinging around to this left-handed batter's box area. When it turns into a swipe tag with the catcher out in fair territory, that's a good place to be. And so what we see is our umpires, they get very comfortable reacting to plays like this. They go here all the time. That's where they're going to go. The problem is when the catcher doesn't cooperate and he moves to his left, if we put our umpire over here, what's going to happen when this runner slides into the plate? He's going to slide between us and the fielder, right? So no longer are we in the window. We're outside the window at this point. So we've got to ask ourselves, how do I stay in the window here? And the reality is you might not need to move. Now, as the catcher moves a little further, maybe we need to stay with him. But this is why it's so important for us not to react to this movement by the catcher. When he goes out in front of the plate, if you start cheating this way and then he goes this way, are you backpacking the catcher anymore? Are you staying with him? No, you're losing your relationship to that catcher. So you need to stay in the window The only way you can do that, reacting to the fielder's movement. So that's our second key. We talked about stay close to the catcher. We talked about reacting to the fielder's movement. Now we're gonna break a rule here, unfortunately. Okay, and this is where guys really start to, to maybe dislike this, and it's harder to accept, because those first couple points they're not too controversial. But when we say, hey, you might not be set for all your plays anymore, that's be set for plays. That's like probably the first thing that you get told as an umpire when you're starting to umpire Little League. Be set for plays. The reality is, if our umpire is going to go way back over here to third base line extended at the back of the dirt circle, you might as well be set, right? Can you really change your ability to see into a play very much by moving around back here? No, we as we demonstrated with, our geometry earlier, these steps back here aren't going to be very effective. So maybe you get lucky and you end up in the right spot for a play, but if it turns into a collision play or a more severe swipe tag on the back of the runner, you're gonna be out of position here, and there's nothing you can do about it. So you might as well be set. So when you're far away, be set. So it's important to clarify, I'm not talking about every single play you have on the baseball field when I say you might not be set for all your plays anymore. I'm talking about the plays where you can be in the window no matter what. So when you can follow this catcher around, when you can stay on his back, then that movement throughout the play might be necessary. And let's look at these two, let's say, conflicting ideas. So be set for plays, that's what's been instructed for a very long time. Or put yourself in a position where you can continue to adjust with quiet steps to ensure that you see the critical information. Okay, that doesn't sound terribly blasphemous, does it? When you're talking about breaking umpire rules, that's not ridiculous. Now that's different than, let's say you're in the working area in two-man, and you have a pickoff play at first base or a back pick play at first base. Then you need to be set, because then you're not in the window, you're not changing your ability to see the play. You might as well just get set and see it with a steady camera. But when we can make sure we see what we need to see, and let's just demonstrate it with this this shot here. Let me see if I can do some notations here. No, I can't. So the reason we want to be set, the reason we want to follow this fielder and then continue to adjust, if he tags the runner on the side here, right? He tags the runner on the side, we're in a position to see it. But if the tag happens on the back and we stay back here, we're not going to see the tag on the back. We need to continue to move as this circle, right? These two things are continuing to circle around one another. We've got to stay in that window to make sure that we see it. So we don't know where the tag is going to hit the runner until it hits the runner. And so you might do everything right. You might stay close, right? So if we've stayed close to start, and then the catcher goes up the third base line, so we stay with him. But now the tag happens on the back side of the runner's body, and if you stay back here, you're not going to see that tag. You need to be up here with the catcher, looking just over his left shoulder rather than back here getting straight lined on it. So that's why we're going to break that last rule of be set for plays. This would be a good time if we have any questions to look at them before we get into videos.
I just got one from Jeff. So let me, it's from Jeff Wertz here. By maintaining the plate, okay, so by maintaining the plate, Brian, do you mean keeping it in your peripheral at all times? Or what exactly do you mean by that?
Yes. So let's see, which one do we want to use? All right, so the key is, yes, I mean, we're not running up the third base line with this catcher because that's not where our responsibilities are. Our responsibilities are at the plate, right? If we have a rundown, now we adjust and we have mechanics for that in our umpiring crew. However, we don't want to completely lose track of our responsibilities at the plate. So yeah, in terms of maintaining the plate, yes, you have to be at your responsible base, and you have to be in a position that you can see the touch of that base, right? Because there might be two different things to officiate here. There might be the tag that happens up here, up the line a little bit, but there also might be the touch of the plate. And so we're not gonna overcommit ourselves way up here and then not be able to see whether the runner touches the plate, right? So it is a balance of, we want to see the tag or the missed tag, but we also need to be able to see the touch of the plate. All right, let's look at some video. This will spark some discussion, I imagine, or this kind of reinforces the points that we've been making. So this is the perfect demonstration of an umpire backing up and going to third base line extended. Okay. This is a perfect demonstration of it. So if we were analyzing this position, you know, in the year 2010, this would be great. This is fine. Good job. He backed up to the edge of the dirt circle. He picked third base line extended, which was correct, and he was set for the play. Perfect umpiring. Great. Let's look at why this is a problem. All right. That's a pretty good look at it right there. The reality is this play cooperated with the umpire's position, right? He ended up in the window by chance. It just happened to develop in a way that those two things came together right in his field of vision. However, let's look at it from this angle. If this tag happens a little bit later and it's on, let's see, the left shoulder, right? The far side shoulder of this runner, can this umpire see that tag? I can't see everybody right now, but I'm hoping everybody's going like this. This umpire can't see that tag. And so what we want to do with this position, and this is really what it all boils down to, we want to control the play, okay? You want to control your ability to see the play no matter how it happens. In this case, the play cooperated and we were in the right spot. But we can't ask the play to cooperate. Plays don't cooperate all the time. Weird stuff happens. The ball takes a slower bounce than the catcher expected. You know, the runner stumbles, like I said. So we're not in the business of predicting, because if that prediction is wrong, we have no recourse to change. What we need to be in the business of is reacting. So all three of those things, stay close, react to the fielder, and continue to adjust, allow you to react rather than predict. And by the way, one of the cool things, I know this umpire is a buddy of mine. He has embraced the newer way of doing things. We worked a couple series together. We talked about taking tag plays, and rather than being stubborn or set in his ways, he said, you know what? There is a better way to do it. And I'm not taking responsibility for that myself. It's, you know, the conversation that goes on with many different crews and such. But here's a guy who, he gets to an NCAA Division I regional. He's working in some pretty big conferences, doing it one way, but he's flexible enough to say, I need to do it a better way. I got to find a video of him taking a play more recently where he's in a great position. All right, let's contrast that last play to this play here. And we're talking about starting position and being close and being able to stay in that window, right? Now, this is kind of cool because what we see is the umpire wanting to clear the bat, but that clearance of the bat is also putting him in a really good position. Now, he he didn't clear the bat and then accidentally end up in a good position. That was all kind of part of the plan. He knew he wanted to get closer. He said, well, I might as well clear the bat while I'm doing it because I'm awesome and I can multitask. Which is why he's, working the National League Championship Series. But look at the difference of that last play, backing up to the edge and staying still versus keeping ourselves in a position where, look at that, no matter where that tag happens, he was going to see it. He was going to see, that's a great last shot, isn't it?
Brian, as this one comes through, I think one of the things that our umpires have a tendency to do right now is like we're able to anticipate that window. But as you see this umpire in this slide, he continues, and I talked about this on Tuesday, was using the arc. And like if he were to stay in that position, you see how he's in the over slide of the runner. So like in a lot of the clips that you've seen me use and that you'll see me use again on Tuesday, the umpire has ultimately stayed in that spot. And like we've got to continue to step, like Brian said, to continue to stay in the wedge. And that allows us to have those quiet steps, those controlled movements to stay right there.
You and I are becoming a very nice team here, Stu, because I've got an overslide play dialed up for us.
Here comes.
All right, so let's ask ourselves the question. Our camera's unfortunately a little tardy here to show us the full development, but is our umpire in the window?
Yep.
Does he stay in the window? Is he still in between these two things? If the catcher had come back to try to tag, was the umpire still in the window?
Yep.
The answer is yes. Right? So that's why we want to continue to adjust as this play unfolds. Now, there's a difference in a slow under control step versus running to get into position late. And that's why we call it quiet steps. That's why it's important for us to be in position and then stay in position. All right, let's see. We're running out of time here. See if we can, here's a really good, this is a great example of an umpire getting comfortable doing one thing and then the play not cooperating with them, right? So we talked earlier about guys tend to get very comfortable going towards this left-handed batter's box because that's where your swipe tag plays ask you to go, right? If you're going to have a swipe tag left-handed batter's box or somewhere near that is a pretty good spot for it. The problem is if we pick that side before the catcher ever moves, maybe it doesn't turn into a swipe tag. Maybe it turns into more of a collision play, right? And so where does the window close on this play, right? The line here is right here. This is where we need to be to see the interaction between the fielder and the runner. So if we do this properly, in this case, and we start at the point of the plate and we stay close and we see that the catcher's not moving anywhere, we're just going to stay there at the point of the plate and wait for this play to tell us, is it going to be a swipe tag or is it going to be a collision play? And then once the play tells us, we can take that one or two steps. In this case, it would be to the left for the umpire here.
Kind of two things here real quick, Brian. We had a question from George. I'll get to that one here in just a second. But I think one of the phrases that Brian said has said a couple times here today is, where does that window close? Like if you think about shutting a window, right? Like just as we would shut a normal window, as the runner is kind of like one spot of the window and the fielder's the other one, as that one closed, make sure that we go ahead and stay in between that one. And obviously that was demonstrated there. George, his follow-up to that last point here that we just went through, Brian, was, so don't anticipate, react. He's asking that we react rather than anticipate. Is that assumption correct?
Absolutely. Yes, George. Perfect. The old way of taking plays to the plate, like we started this conversation with, was back up to the edge of the dirt circle, and then based on where the throw is coming from and the likelihood of collision versus swipe tag, pick one side or the other. And you were doing that pretty early in the play, like maybe even before the ball gets released or as the ball is released. So we're anticipating, we're going to one side, and then, like I said, hopefully the play cooperated with us. now we want to control the play. We want to react to those things that are in front of us. All right. I think we've hammered the wedge theory on you here. And I know I was only supposed to have 3 keys, but we've got to hammer this point home, okay? Because when Stu and I were looking at some of the videos that he wanted to use, and in our trainings for the last 5 years, one of the biggest problems that we have in the umpiring community is we forget proper use of eyes, right? So how do we fix that? And I still don't have the answer, because you can tell people till you're blue in the face, use your eyes properly, but when push comes to shove, sometimes they just don't, and it's really hard to train that. The one thing that I've found in my own game, and talking to some of the higher level guys that I talk to, is you've really got to take advantage of the routine plays, right? And that's the thing about baseball umpiring. So much of it is easy, and it doesn't require any effort, and it doesn't even really require that we're there. The game calls itself. But that either allows you to fall into bad habits or develop really good habits. Okay, so for all of those really easy plays at first base, the guy's out by 5 steps, or those tag plays at the plate where he tags them, there's no doubt about it, he's out. Those are the opportunities for us to practice proper use of eyes. And if you do that on those 98% of your plays that you have that are easy and routine, then you're going to develop the muscle memory, the habit of using your eyes properly. Okay, there's a tag. Let me go up to the glove. He's still got the ball. Now I can call him out. But that's the key. We've got to use those opportunities to practice when the play isn't exciting, because when the play gets exciting, we speed up. You get that little adrenaline burst. You know you're going to have a close play at the plate. Everything starts to speed up. And if you haven't practiced, you don't have anything to fall back on. So that's the one point I wanted to leave you guys with today. Use your eyes properly.
Yeah, and Brian, that was a huge theme in 2019. Those guys on the call have been from that 2019 crew in the Central Region. We talked about proper use of eyes, and just as you said, I think this is a big point to highlight, is to take advantage of the routine plays, because that's where we build the muscle memory. That's where we build the habit. And, DJ and I have talked, DJ Rose is on the call as well. We've talked about, stepping it out in your living room and things like that. But in reality, our reps have got to come from those routine plays as well. And that way, when we get to a play that's close, exciting, and going to have an impact on the game, like we default back to those habits that we would build and would have constructed in those routine plays. So I can't highlight that one enough. Take advantage of the routine plays. That's one idea here that I've really has rung loudly with me. I got a couple questions here to feed to Brian here. Larry asks, is there a key point when you should be adjusting? Is there a key point when you are adjusting? Is it the release of the ball from the fielder, or what's the key point that we should adhere to when adjusting?
It would be when the fielder starts to react to the flight of the ball. That would be when we want to start to go. The problematic plays are the ones where the fielder doesn't go anywhere, when he stays still. But that's when it becomes even more important for us to be close, right? Because if we're close to the fielder, we can wait. We can wait to see how the play is going to unfold, and that opportunity for us to take 2 steps to our left or 2 steps to our right as the ball is arriving and the tag is coming down, being close allows you to do that. But once you see the fielder move, if he's going to move, then that's when we want to start to adjust. If the catcher in this case stays put on the plate, then we want to just kind of stay close to him, and then we're reading how the fielder and the runner are going to interact. Is it going to be more of a swiping tag, or is it going to be more of a collision play? The collision play at the plate will necessitate a step or 2 to the left, swipe tag, step or 2 to the right. But you're going to have the opportunity to wait longer because you're closer to do that if the fielder stays put.
Great question there, Larry. And I think a really good answer. Don, you dropped an answer into or not necessarily a question, but a statement in the chat. We appreciate it with regards to the teachings of it. And like he said, and Brian and I have had this conversations that everybody's in a different place in their journey, and we can all help each other along the way. That's what we're here to do. And just as Brian shared his story about how he helped a fellow umpire in the NCAA, that's exactly what we're out to do as well. We've got about less than a minute left here, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. Thanks again for everybody for joining us. Brian, thanks for being here and taking some time out of your day. We really appreciate it. Next week, same time, same place. It'll be a follow-up to the Wedge on the Bases. And I'm proud to announce that we'll have AAA umpire Jose Matamoros with us from Wisconsin here in the Central Region. So I'll have a promo out to you guys in the week or so. But Jose will be back on with us next week to go ahead and talk about Wedge on the Bases. Thanks again for being here. Hopefully everybody's safe and healthy. I'll go ahead and post the invite out again, just as we did this week, again for everybody as well. Guys, have a great rest of the day today. Have a great weekend and hope to see everybody again next week. Thanks again, Brian, for joining us here today. Have a good one, guys.